What's up everybody, welcome back. So in today's video we're going to make sure that the AI can attack the player and hit us. So right now we can attack him and apply damage and kill him, but he can't do anything to us. So we're going to level the playing field and make sure that we have actually some combat in our game. So that's today's video. If you like what I do and you want to support the channel, you can become a member or you can check out my Ko-fi page. Both links are in the description of the video. Becoming a member will give you access to some premium channels in the Discord, as well as a membership badge and some premium downloads in the Discord. If you do not want to become a member, you're still welcome to join the Discord and talk about some game dev stuff or show off a project that you made, or just ask questions about one of these tutorials. So with those announcements out of the way as well, let's dive into the video. So first of all, I want to take a look at the XP component. In one of the previous videos, we set our ComponentAddXP event to make it a multicast event, but we might want to set it to reliable because this is a pretty important event in terms of our gameplay. So let's make sure it's reliable and it doesn't get dropped. So with that out of the way, we can start taking a look at our AI. And the first thing that we want to do is make sure that we set the AI up in the same way that we're going to use it in our game, and that's most likely spawning them in. So first of all, let's create a spawner. Let's go to the gameplay folder and create a new blueprint class, and I'm going to create a new actor. So this is going to be my blueprint spawn point AI. So right now I'm not really going to add any code in here. I'm just going to make sure that we can use the location of this actor to spawn an AI, and that's all. So I'm going to add a scene component, and then I'm going to add a billboard so I can see where it's at. And let's raise it a little bit. So that's all I'm going to do in here. And then we're going to go to our framework folder and open our shooter game mode. And in here we have the start level event. This will actually call when the level starts. And at the end we have the for each loop where we enable the input for the players, and after that we can spawn an enemy. So if we simply get all actors of class. So we're not gonna actually set this up too complicated right now. We just want to make sure that if we test it, our AI behaves in the same way if we would spawn it in the level. So let's look for our spawn point and let's get the only one in here. So get a copy index 0. And then we're simply going to spawn an actor from class. And that's going to be our AI base actor. So that's our minion base. And then we can get the transform. Get actor transform and plug that into our spawn actor. And this should make one enemy spawn at the start of the map. So now all we need to do is make sure that we actually place the actor that we created in the map. So let's open our gameplay map and let's grab a viewport in here as well. So I'm going to get rid of the normal enemy that's placed in the map, and then I'm going to add one of my spawn points that we just created, and it should spawn an enemy right here. So let's just save it and make sure that this is working. So let's have a quick look over here. So I noticed if you launch a solo game, it could mess up your save profile. So if you are testing and you want to make sure that everything is working, you simply need to make sure that you start a multiplayer game and then just start it solo. So he is spawning in, he's not moving, but I know why that's happening. So right now we have everything set up and good to go. So let's start by opening up our minion base character and making some changes in here. So first of all, I'm going to add one component, and that's going to be a collision box. And if the player is inside that collision box, the AI can attack him. So I'm going to call that the attack trigger. So let's add a component, and that's the box collision. And that's my attack trigger. So let's put it in front of our enemy, and I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. So let me check my project, my example project. So I made it 50 over the front axis. So not that one, but this one. 50, 32. So it sticks out a little bit further in the front. and then make sure that it's just outside of the capsule component. So this should be the attack trigger, and I'm going to attach it to the mesh so it's attached over here. Well, that's all the components that we need, so let's dive into the event graph, and we need to make a few small changes in here as well. So first of all, when the level starts, I want to make sure that I store the default move speed for this AI. So I'm going to do this on the event possessed, and I'm simply going to drag in my character movement component and get the current maximum walk speed and store that. So let's get the maximum walk speed and make sure that we promote it to a variable, and that's my default walk speed. So that way I don't have to worry about this variable. If I change it in the defaults, this will always match up. So with this out of the way, we want to create a multicast event to set up the clients. So let's create a new custom event. And I'm going to call this, let's call it multicast remove client trigger. And I'm going to remove all of the attack triggers for the clients, and I'm also going to disable event tick for the clients, because everything will run on the server and they simply don't need it if they are a client. So let's make it a multicast event and set it to reliable. And then let's add a branch in here and check if we are the server. So condition is server, and if this is false, we want to delete our attack trigger component. So let's destroy component and make sure you hook it up to the false pin. And for the clients, we also want to disable event tick. So let's set tick enabled and just set it to false, and that should be good. So we're going to call this event after the default walk speed setter. So let's just call multicast remove client trigger, and that's done as well. So on a little side note, we spawned in the AI because the ownership of the AI changes if you spawn it in or place it in the map, and we want to make sure that the relation to the server is the same when we test everything. So that's why we created the spawner, and we could have different results if we simply drop an enemy in the map, because the ownership is different. So we have this set up. Then we want to go into our onAI spawned event, and right here at the end where we give the move order, we need to add a small delay, otherwise the first move order will be aborted. So let's add a delay in here and make it 0.2, and that should be fine. And then let's go into our die event, and over here, let's see. So we want to make sure that we destroy our attack trigger component again. So let's just move this over a little bit, and then drag in our attack trigger. And the first thing that we're going to do if we die is destroy the component. So we do not have to worry about that anymore as well. And then I think for now we are done in the event graph, and first we need to set up some things with montages to make sure that we can continue. So first of all, we need to create animation montages for our attack animations. So let's go to the Paragon Minions folder, characters, and then minions. And the animations are in the down folder, and then animations melee. So in here we have a bunch of different sets of attack animations. I'm just going to pick one for now, and later in the tutorial we can add a data table with different variations of characters and different attack sets and things like that. So right now we're not going to worry about different variations, we're just going to set everything up. So I'm going to pick one of each. So that's attack A, B, C, D, and E. And then I'm going to right click and create an animation montage. And let's open those up. So let's have a look. And right in here we want to make sure that we change the slot name. So we're going to change the slot to our full body slot, and that should already be on the skeleton. We created it earlier in the tutorial. And if you do not have it, then you can simply go to the animation slot manager and create a new slot in here and call that full body, and that's all you need to do. Then assign it over here in the slots. So let's save it and do the same thing for the other montages. So we have attack A, and that's going to be the upper full body slot, not upper body. And then we have B, full body, and C, and the last one as well. So with those set up, we need to make sure that our animation graph actually has a full body slot node, and if you follow the tutorial you should already have it. So you simply add a slot node by looking for the slot. Let me see, by default that's called default slot, and then if you select it you can change the slot you want to use over here. So make sure that you have a full body slot in your animation blueprint, and then we can go back to our minion base character and start setting things up. Let's start by creating a bunch of new variables that we're gonna need. So let's create a new one, and the first one is going to be CanAttack, and that's a boolean, so that's fine. Then we're gonna need our melee anim index, so melee anim index, and that's going to be an integer. The next one we need is an array of all of our attack animations, so let's call it all attack anims, although they're actually montages, but whatever. So animation montage. And let's turn it into an array. And then we also need our default walk speed, but we just created that. And we need can damage left and can damage right booleans. So can damage left, and that's a single boolean. And then also can damage right. There we go. So for the attack animations, we want to make sure that we set the default variables. So let's compile it and let's add 5 array elements in here. And then we can simply add the animation montages that we created a little bit earlier. So let's look for those. Those are over here. So we have attack A montage. So we need, and you simply want to plug them in order, so we can make sure that the AI can have sort of a combo, so they actually match up in order over here. So this is the animation sequence. We want to plug in the montage, so C, D, and the last one. And make sure you plug in the montage. There we go. So we have those defaults set up as well. Then we want to go into our die event again, and over here we're gonna make sure that we set our CanAttack boolean to false. So let's do that right away, and we can't forget. So CanAttack, plug it in over here and set it to false. And then we're gonna set up some overlap events for our attack trigger. So let's select it over here and scroll down, and then we can look for the component begin overlap and also the component end overlap events. So let's add both of those. There we go. And let's start with the begin overlap first. So we want to know if we can attack the player that entered our attack trigger. So we're gonna add a branch in here first. And we want to make sure that our other actor is our target player. So let's compare it. And simply plug in the target player from our variables. And we also need to make sure that we are actually alive. So let's grab a boolean and let's plug in our isAlive bool and hook it up to the condition. So if those are true, we can attack. So we're gonna drag in our CanAttack boolean and set it to true. And then we also want to drag in our melee animation index and set it to 0. So we start at the first attack animation. And then I'm gonna drag in my character movement component and set the maximum walk speed to 0. So when I'm attacking, I do not want the AI to move, so I'm simply gonna set the speed to 0. That's the easiest way to stop movement. And then over here we're going to call our attack loop, but we need to create it, so let's do that a little bit later. First let's look at the end overlap over here. So if a player leaves the attack trigger, we want to stop attacking, so we're going to add a branch in here first and make sure that the other actor actually is our target player. So let's compare it and simply plug in the target player. So if our target leaves our attack trigger, we want to stop attacking, and we need a multicast event to stop our montages from playing. So let's create a custom event and call this something like multicast stop current montage. And we're going to make it a multicast event and set it to reliable. Well, that's not really needed, by the way, so let's not make it reliable. And all we need to do in here is call the stop animation montage. So stop anim montage. And if you do not plug anything in here, it will simply stop the current montage that it's playing. So that should work fine. So we're going to call that over here, MC stop current montage. And then we want to set our can attack boolean back to false. So let's drag it in over here. And we also want to set our character movement maximum walk speed back to the default. So let's drag in a setter for that and simply plug in our default walk speed. And that should be good to go as well. And so with those out of the way, we can set up our attack loop. So the attack loop is going to be pretty simple. First of all, let's create a custom event over here, and I'm going to call it attack loop. And I'm going to worry about this a little bit later. I'm also going to create another custom event, and that's going to be a multicast play attack montage. So we need to make sure that this is a multicast event. And then in here, we're going to play the montage. So let's do that first. Drag off here, play montage. And for this, we want to make the montage to play a variable on the event. So let's drag it on here. And for that skeletal mesh component, we can simply drag in our character mesh and plug it in. And then on blend out, we want to make some extra code in here. So we're going to add a branch, and we want to make sure that we are the server. So is server. And if we are the server, we want to increase our melee animation index. So let's drag in our melee anim index and let's increment it. Increment int and plug it in over here. And then we need to make sure that we do not exceed our array bounds. So we're going to grab a branch in here, and we're going to check our current melee animation index and compare it to our array length. So let's drag over here and do greater than or equal to. And if our current melee animation index is equal to the length of all attack animations, then we are actually outside of the bounds of our array, and we need to set it back to 0. So we're going to grab the length of this array and plug it in over here. This is the condition, and if this is true, our melee animation index will be 0 again. So we're going to restart our attack combo, and otherwise it's fine. So we're going to simply keep it at the incremented int. And if this is done, we can call our attack loop event again. So plug it into both of the branches over here. And then all we need to do inside of the attack loop is make sure that we grab a branch in here to check if we can actually continue attacking. So we're going to grab our isAlive boolean. And we're also going to check our can attack boolean. And plug both of those in here. And if this is true, we're going to call our multicast event. So multicast play attack montage. And then we can simply drag in all of our attack animations and get the one at the current melee animation index. So plug that in over here. And then make sure that you plug this into the event node, and then we are good to go. So because we removed all of the triggers from the client, this will only be called from the server. So the attack loop event will also only be run on the server itself. It will then call a multicast event to play the montage, and then the server will continue to increase the animation index and start the loop over. So that's how it's going to work, and then all we need to do is make sure that we call our attack loop on the begin overlap trigger event. So right at the end over here, let's call our attack loop. And then that should work. So right now, if we walk into the trigger, it should start playing the attack animations. And I think, well, let's add some damage traces as well, and then we can have a little test. So we're going to use traces to make sure that our enemy can hit something, and to make sure that he is not simply always tracing, we're going to make some changes in our montages. So let's go to the animation melee folder and let's open up the first montage that we created. So I'm going to start with the attack A montage, and we need to make sure that we separate those between left and right. So this is a right hand swing. And we're going to add some notifies to this. So first of all, I'm going to take a look at where I actually want to trace this. So as you can see, the most part of the swing, I don't really need to trace it. I want to start tracing right about here. And then for the swing till about here. So only in this small part, these 4 or 5 frames, I'm actually going to perform traces. So let's start over here. And then go to the notifies bar over here. And if you right click, we can create a new notify. So let's add notify and create a new one. And I'm going to call this something like sort right and then start. And then I'm going to move over a little bit to the end of the swing. And then I'm going to add a second notify, and that's going to be sort right end. So new notify, sort right end. And then we need to do the same thing for all of the other montages as well. So we have the B montage, and this is going to be a left hand swing. So we're going to make sure that we change it into sort left start and sort left end. So let's add a new notify over here. And this is going to be sort left start. And then move it over to the end of the swing right about here somewhere. And then let's add a sort left end notify as well. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same thing for all of the other montages. So make sure that you grab the left and the right hand correctly, and then just add a left start, left end, or right start or right end. And when you add those, we're going to go back into the animation blueprint and make some changes in there. So all of my montages have the notifies in place. And by the way, if you already created a notify, then you can simply right click and then go to add notify, skeleton notify, and then select the notify that you already created earlier. So don't need to create them for each montage, just make sure that you add them in every one of them. So now that we have those out of the way, let's go back into our animation blueprint for the minion character, so our AI. And in the event graph, I'm going to make a few small changes. So first of all, we have this setter over here for our minion base character, and I want to store it. So let's just grab the function over here, blueprint initialize animation. And then we're going to move this over to there. So we're going to grab our pawn owner and cast it to our minion base. And then we're going to promote it to a variable in here. So right click, promote to variable, and that's good. Then we need to reconnect our ragdoll notify and make sure that we plug in our minion base character. And then we're also going to grab notify events for the ones that we just created. So we have our sort right start, and then animation notify, sort right end, and then for the left ones as well. So left start and left end. And then all we need to do for these ones is grab the minion base character and set our can damage left and right to the correct values. So let's drag in our minion base character, and this is the right sort. So we're going to set our can damage right. And this is start, so we're going to set it to true. And then for the next one, where it's end, we're going to set it back to false. And then do the same thing for the left. So grab our minion base character and set can damage left. No. And for the start swing, we want to set it to true. And if it's ended, we're gonna set it back to false. And plug everything in. So that's good to go. And now we can go back into our minion base character and actually set up the trace event. So let me grab my notes quickly. I'm gonna create a function for this, and let's call that do melee trace or something like that. And first of all, I want to know if I'm going to trace for my left or my right hand. So I'm gonna grab a branch, and I'm gonna grab my can damage left boolean. So if I can damage left, I want to trace on my left sword. So I'm gonna do a sphere trace for objects. So let's drag off here and do sphere trace for objects. And that's the lower one over here. And then for the start and the end positions, we can use some bones that are actually on the swords of the character. So let's drag in our mesh. And we can get our socket location. And we want to get 2 of these. So the first one is going to be the start, and the last one, the second one is going to be the end location. And then we can grab the names from the skeleton. So we have our weapon sword left as the hand bone, and then we can grab our FX trail 01 left as the tip bone from the sword. So if we would look at our character over here in the skeleton tree, so let me see, we have our hand, and then we have the weapon sword left over here. Well, this is right, but it doesn't really matter. So you can see that's attached at the lower hand of the character, and then we're going to use the FX trail 01, which is at the tip of the sword. So we're going to trace along the length of the sword over here. So those are the bone names that you want to pick. And then for the object types, you want to drag off here and make an array. And you want to trace for pawn objects. So make sure that you select the pawn over here. And then we can make sure that we can actually see what's happening. So let's set it to for duration, but let's change the duration to 1 second. So it's a little bit more clear what's happening. And now that we have this out of the way, we can do the same thing for our right hand. So we can simply copy all of this stuff and paste it over here. And let's connect it to the false pin. And this time we want to check if we can damage on the right side. And then we need to make sure that we change the socket names. So this is going to be sword right. And then this is going to be the FX trail right with a capital R. And again, we want to trace for pawn objects, so that's fine. And we do need to set the radius for the sphere trace. So let's set it to something like 15 maybe. And do that over here as well. And that should do for now. So we're gonna work on this a little bit more later with the hit results and things like that. For now, we just want to see if this is working. So let's compile and save it, and then let's go to the event graph. And in here, I'm gonna look for my event tick. So let's grab event tick in here. And on tick, I'm gonna call my do melee trace and plug it in. And now I think with this setup, we can have a quick test. So let's have a little look. So let's have a quick multiplayer test to see if this is working. On a little side note, you might want to close down as much blueprints in the background as possible. And if you have a little bit of a slower machine, you might get a little bit less constant results because your tick rate is a little bit lower. And because of that, the traces will appear a bit further away from each other. So depending on the performance of your machine, and if you're testing with 4 clients on one machine or simply a solo game, this might have a little bit different results. But as long as you're running just one instance of the game in an actual game build, this will work fine, and the traces will actually appear really close to each other, and there will hardly be any chance of it missing the player. So as you can see, we have the animations playing on both screens, and it's actually performing a combo attack, so it's changing the attack every time. And we have the traces going on that actually hit our character. So we have a pretty decent setup going, and I think we're gonna wrap it up for this video and continue in the next one to make sure that we actually have some damage feedback on the player and that the player can take damage. So for now, thanks for watching everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, and you're also welcome to join the Game Dev Raw Discord or become a member of the channel and check out my Ko-fi page if you want to support the channel. So thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Bye bye.